Alright, so I wrote some alternate endings to two movies, Rounders and Shawshank Redemption, that I think would be hilarious. I wanted to read them to you, and this is the actual video. So starting right here is where this starts in the video, where the camera pans down to the pipe, the sewer pipe right here. So starting right here, 2:16 is where this alternate ending takes place. Camera's panning down at this angle to seeing Andy right here, like a side view of the pipe. Alright, starting at 2:16. Right here, Red narrates as the camera pans down to the pipe. But unbeknownst to Andy, or anyone else in Shawshank Prison, there was a steel grate welded over the end of the sewer pipe. All of Andy's hopes and dreams crushed in an instant. Camera starts slowly zooming in on the sewer pipe with 5 evenly spaced horizontal pieces of 3/4 inch thick rebar welded over the sides of the pipe. Suddenly, Andy's hands appear grabbing the second bar up, and you hear Andy shouting, "No! Fuck! Fuck!" Red begins to narrate again. Had Andy known his dreams were going to be flushed down the sewer pipe along with himself and the sewage, he would have used the 6-foot rope around his ankle to hang himself in his cell that night instead. Back to hearing Andy, but by now the camera has slowly panned over to a straight-on shot, so you can see more than just Andy's hands. You can see him So you can see more of Andy's hands. You can see him palm striking the bars, yelling, "Why? God damn it! Why, God, why?" As he begins punching the bars over and over again, and after the 7th punch, he breaks his pinky knuckle and immediately stops punching the bars and holds his broken hand with his other hand while shaking profusely, shouting, "Son of a bitch, motherfucking cock-sucking bitch! Fuck!" as he begins to start shivering and throwing up in the sewage. And Red starts flapping his jaw again right then. And Andy had realized he was fucked because even if he did have the energy to crawl backwards uphill the 500 yards he had come already, which he didn't, he wouldn't have been able to get back out of the pipe because the hole was just barely exactly big enough for him to squeeze through, which could only be done going into the pipe because of the angle. And he had left the rock on the ground next to the pipe out of his reach. All the while Red is narrating all of that, you're watching Andy pounding his fist on the left, with his left hand, his non-broken hand, in the sewage and on the walls of the pipe, and grabbing the bars occasionally, trying to shake them loose, but only moving himself in trying it and not the bars. You can see his mouth moving while he's doing it, but you can't hear anything because Red is talking, which has first strike and trample over who gets to be heard when two people are talking. You then begin to hear Red continue his precious fucking monologue. So Andy did next what any sane person literally at the end of his rope would do. You know, literally, because he's...
Yeah, the actual pun intended. Pun intended.
Then it shows Andy burying his face in the raw sewage and not pulling out. Red saying he gave up the foulest, shit-smelling way he could. While just shoving air bubbles appearing in the sewage around where his mouth is.
Suffocated himself in shit.
It shows this for 45 seconds before Andy stops moving, laying face down in the sewage. Red then saying, "You never know until you try. Andy tried and he failed miserably. The lesson is, never try." And then the cast rolls up.
That's fucking awesome.
keep filming. Alright, so that's That's the end of Shawshank Redemption.
You should do 2 separate videos, one for each one.
Alright, so this is the alternate ending to Rounders. Starting at the scene at the end, right here. Alright, this is where this alternate ending starts in the video.
Flock and not straight.
Alright, I'm sure you're all familiar with this scene. Alright, so starting right here, when he drops the cards. And you know how earlier on, how it shows that he has a 9? And it turns out that that's what Andy thought he saw, was a 9.
Andy?
Yeah. Or, I mean, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike McDermott. Alright, 517. When Mike says, Alright, starting at 517, where Mike says, I flopped a knot straight. And he drops his 2 cards, then the camera zooms in on the 2 cards, and it shows he had a 6 of clubs, not a 9 of clubs. And it zooms on his face, looking at the cards with a horrified look on his face, saying, what the fuck? No, I swear that was a 9 the first time I looked at it. Because then he doesn't have a full house.
Yeah.
He just has a 6. As it shows Grandma standing up saying, morning just came and you haven't made good. Not good. Because, at that point, you know that he's lost. And you know how Grandma says he still has till morning to make good?
Yeah.
With KGB laughing, says, okay, I won. Everybody out. Nothing more to see here as he shoos everyone out of the club. Grandma inches his way closer to Mike while pulling out a flapjack out of his pocket. Mike's sitting there with both his hands up saying, come on, Grandma, it's not morning just yet. I still have 6 minutes. Let me just make one phone call real quick, and I can get you your money. Meanwhile, it shows KGB finish shooing everyone out of the club, then look at Mike and crack his fingers like this and cock his neck left and right, and you hear cracks when he cocks his neck left and right. Then it goes back over to Grandma. It's too late for that, and it's morning when I say it is. And right after he says that, he flapjacks Mike in the back of the head as hard as he can, and Mike's head slams down onto the table with blood coming out of the back of his head where he was hit. KGB says, hey now, save some for me, this isn't over yet. Grandma then holds Mike's wrists down on the table, and KGB comes over to Mike and starts lightly smacking Mike in the face over and over until he starts coming to while saying, wake up into your new hell. Your nightmare is just now beginning. You hearing me in there? With a smile on his face. Mike, halfway conscious, says while sounding half drunk, now wait a minute, I was cheated. Then it shows Grandma still holding Mike's wrist down on the table, with Mike bent out chest first onto the table, with the edge of the table intersecting with Mike's groin, with his legs hanging over the edge of the table. Grandma looks at KGB and nods while holding his wrists, and it shows KGB pull down Mike's pants and mount Mike while leaning over him, whispering into his ear, you are mine. I own you now. And starts thrusting his cock into Mike's ass. Mike starts screaming and squirming, saying, no, no, don't stop. And Grandma says, don't stop. I knew you would like this. He says, don't stop. Like, no, don't stop. And Grandma says, don't stop. I knew you would like this. Then it shows Mike really try hard to free his wrists from Grandma's grasp. And right as Mike is getting a wrist free from Grandma's grasp, Grandma headbutts Mike 3 times really hard, right on the back of the head, because he's holding him like this and Mike's laying down like that, so he headbutts him because he's holding his wrists. So Mike's head is like right here, and he's like bent over the table like this, And so he's bent over the table like this, and the table's like right here,
Yeah.
the edge of it. So Mike's head is right here. He headbutts him with his forehead really hard like that. That'd be brutal. 3 times in the back of the head where he was flapjacked. And then Mike goes limp with a lot of blood pouring out onto the table from his head. And the camera pans back, showing KGB. So the camera pans back, like, so you can see everything. Showing KGB continuing to thrust until he makes a huge sigh of relief and pulls his dick out of Mike and pulls his pants up while saying, "Now dispose of this trash before I catch a second wind."
Catch a second wind.
Grandma picking up Mike onto his shoulders, following KGB down a hallway to an exit door that he opens for Grandma, who walks over to a dumpster in a back alley with Mike and throws him into the dumpster onto a bunch of full black trash bags, blood all over Mike's face. And Grandma and KGB stand on 2 barrels with the lids on them, both pee all over Mike's unconscious face. And it shows a close-up of 2 streams of urine clear most of the blood off of Mike's face. While Grandma is saying, "Don't worry." While Grandma is saying, while they're peeing on his face, Grandma's saying, "Don't worry, the pickup guy will be here soon to properly dispose of this." And KGB, while continuing to pee on his face, says, "Good, good." While they're peeing, they finish up and go back in the door they came out of, and then it shows rats crawling all over Mike. 1 rat crawling over his face as the camera continues to zoom up until you can see a trash truck pulling into the alley as the screen goes darker and darker, and then up rolls the cast.
I love it.
Oh, could you imagine if that movie ended like that?
That'd be hilarious.
Alright, so I wish movies had this, where it's on a touch screen, so it gets to a certain part, and say that the movie would have like 5 sections, where you get to a touch screen, and you can choose, like...
Which direction you want the movie to go?
There's 3 different ways for where the movie goes, and then all those ways, separate from each other, have different branches of ways that the movies can go. Like,
I have a video game like that.
You pick one of those 3 ways, and then you get to the next section, just to make it easy on the actors, because...
I have a video game like that.
If movies did this, they would have like 20 hours worth of movie playing time.
Yeah.
So you could watch the movie like 5 times and still only see it the first time. The only part you'd see over and over is the very first 30, 25 minutes. That part would be the same every single time. And then you get to a part, and then that would split into 3 sections, and then you pick one of those 3 sections, and then it gets, another 25 minutes into the movie, and then it splits into another 3 sections. So by the end, there'd be 25 different ways the movie could end.